a diagnosis doctors don't like to deliver and patients don't want to hear. But last year, millions of Americans were diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease.
A new CDC report shows young women and minorities are at the highest risk of STD infection. Health Watch reporter Beth Galvin is here now with more on those findings. Beth?
Russ and Lisa, Dr. Lisa Flowers sees newly diagnosed women in her Grady clinic almost every day of the week, and many of them are struggling with problems like pain and infertility. Flowers says the CDC's new report is alarming because it shows that young people are not getting the message that unprotected sex is risky. Teenagers may think they're invincible, but Emory-Grady gynecologist Dr. Lisa Flowers says they're not when it comes to sexually transmitted diseases. And a new CDC report shows that young people, especially girls and minorities, are vulnerable to STD infections that could haunt them for years to come.
Well, what's really alarming about it is the fact that the high rates of chlamydia and gonorrhea were all seen in young girls from 15 to 24 years of age. Young women who are just starting their lives, who are now putting themselves at risk for infertility, chronic pelvic pain.
The CDC says there were about 19 million new cases of sexually transmitted diseases in the U.S. in 2007. Chlamydia is at its highest rate ever, with more than 1 million new infections last year.
Chlamydia has been a big problem, and it really is probably underdiagnosed because it's many times it's asymptomatic. And unfortunately, 40% of women who go untreated for chlamydia can end up getting pelvic inflammatory disease.
Gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis are all treatable. But Dr. Flowers says because they often cause few symptoms, many young people don't know that they or their partners are infected, and they're not getting the message about how to protect themselves.
And really, prevention is easy with a condom. Wearing it with your partner, making sure, and I know a lot of us feel that our partners are being monogamous, but the reality of it is it may not be the case. So condoms are important, and abstinence.
Flowers says STDs may not seem like a big deal at first, but if they're left untreated, they can cause scarring and make it difficult for women to get pregnant.
When they really want to have kids, they can't. Or it causes so much scarring in their uterus and adhesions that they complain about chronic pelvic pain.
Flowers says doctors need to do a better job of regularly screening all sexually active women for STDs. And even though sex can be an uncomfortable topic, she says parents, church leaders, and even educators need to get talking.
Prevention, we have to reinforce that because once the damage is done, it's much more difficult to go backwards in time.
And about 1.5 million Americans were diagnosed with either chlamydia or gonorrhea last year, but experts say they think the actual number may be much higher because a lot of people don't get screened and they don't get diagnosed. And you can find a link to the CDC's STD Surveillance 2007 report on myfoxatlanta.com. Just click on the Seen on TV section of our main page, and Russ and Lisa, you can read the report for yourself. It is, as Dr. Flowers says, alarming because you realize how many young people are having unprotected sex, and then the consequences aren't hitting them until years down the road.
Yeah, it's so sad. And I think you put your finger on it that they feel invincible when they're that young.
And interestingly, she says a lot of young people, young women especially, she sees in her clinic, are not having sex because it's their choice. It's because their partners are initiating it and they don't have a way to say no.
Whole new problem there. All right, Beth Galvin, thanks.